Part 5. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 41. Li Enping was about to walk towards the back of the stage, but he didn't expect that a group of people had already walked out from behind the stage. Kato, who took the lead, was livid, and the veins on his forehead were twitching. He really didn't expect that someone would dare to cause trouble in the lone wolf's territory. But when he saw the corpses on the floor in the hall, his vision went dark and he almost fainted. How could he have imagined that Li Enping was so agile? He heard a commotion in the background and the gun team couldn't handle it, so he rushed over immediately. Within a minute or two, Li Enping actually killed everyone in the hall. With all his energy gone, he could no longer imagine how the leader would punish him. And when he saw Lu Haoshan's big pile of fat lying on the ground in the corner, he had a bitter look on his face. He looked at Li Enping bitterly and said, "Boy, who are you? You came here to make trouble? Do you know how much trouble you have caused?" Li Enping ignored him, but listened with his ears and thought, the few people in front of me should be the only ones left in this stronghold. It seems that the one in the lead is the person in charge. Leave him to ask for information, and kill all the others. Then call the police and ask them to rescue all the slave girls behind the stage. "Hey, boy, did you hear what I asked you?" Koto's expression was uncertain at this time. He looked at Lu Haoshan on the ground and then at Li Enping. The clothes on the other person's body were in tatters and covered with blood, but there was no appearance of a wound. You must know that although Lu Haoshan is a playboy, he is also a person with superpowers. He was actually killed by the boy in front of him. And it's not just Lu Haoshan. There are so many people present with guns and cannons. Someone even fired a rocket launcher just now, but they couldn't deal with this kid. This made Koto hesitate for a moment. But just when he wanted to test it out with Li Enping and say something, in the blink of an eye, the other party had disappeared. When he looked again, Li Enping had appeared in front of him. Then he felt a pain in his chest and he had flown away. "Go out." In the sound of gunfire, Kato only saw Li Enping like a ghost. As he circled around his men, they fell down one after another. At this time, Koto didn't know what the other party was planning. He twisted his waist in mid-air and landed on the ground with a somersault. When he looked up, he saw that Li Enping was already rushing towards him. After all, he is one of the leaders of Lone Wolf. He has been fighting in the Emerald City for many years and has rich experience. He has not lost his position, nor is he as impulsive as Lu Haoshan. Seeing Li Enping rushing towards him, he just quickly stepped back, trying to distance himself from the opponent. The opponent is very fast and powerful. He was able to kill Lu Haoshan with his bare hands. He should be a martial arts master or a person with physical mutation ability. We cannot fight him in close combat. Thinking of this, Koto took out his pistol and shot at Li Enping while retreating to prevent him from getting closer. Unexpectedly, Li Enping refused to dodge, endured 2 shots from Koto, and came to him. What? No dodge? Is it a mistake? Or is it his ability? In Koto's sight, Li Enping looked as if he had not been shot. His body's strength was not affected at all, and he punched Koto's head. Boom! Koto held Li Enping's punch with both hands, and his body flew towards the wall again. Then he pushed hard with his feet and stepped towards the wall. His whole body had stopped, leaving only cracks on the wall. At the same time, one of his hands was hanging limply on the side, and it turned out to be dislocated. Seeing Li Enping walking slowly, Koto's brows furrowed even deeper. This punch is a little harder than the first one, but it's definitely not full force, otherwise, it would be impossible to kill Lu Haoshan. Thinking of this, Koto's eyes narrowed, and a trace of murderous intent emerged from it. "Do you want to capture me alive? This kid wants to capture me alive so that you can get information." On the other side, Li Enping looked relaxed, but he was also on high alert inside. "Be careful, I can't absorb his soul, he is also a person with abilities. Li Anping looked at Kato and took a breath. Energy person, why don't you use your ability to fight me? Are you testing something? Or is it that the conditions for activating his ability are very harsh? Looking at the opponent's dislocated arm, Li Anping shook his head. Could it be that it's a non-combat ability? There are many types of abilities, and not all of them can be used to fight or kill. Therefore, it was not beyond Li Anping's expectation to meet an Esper without combat superpowers. It's a pity that he doesn't know enough about ability users, and he can't make an effective judgment on the situation in front of him. Anyway, while testing carefully, I'm trying to find a way to subdue him. Thinking of this, Li Anping kicked off his hind legs and rushed towards Kato. The huge force brought up gusts of wind pressure, and Kato didn't even react. He could only resist it instinctively, but all he could see was the shadow of Li Anping's fist. He protected his vital parts with both hands, and he looked ready to be beaten. Posture. A few seconds later, he had been punched by Li Anping more than 10 times. His whole body was bruised and he was vomiting blood. Fortunately, Li Anping didn't do anything cruel and he survived. But he was basically beaten to a near-death state. Another punch hit Kato on the cheek, knocking Kato to the ground. Li Anping stopped. Seeing the opponent lying on the ground unable to stand up, Li Anping lost interest slightly. It looks like it is indeed a non-combat ability. Physical strength isn't that great either. It is very powerful for ordinary people, but compared to his combat power, he was not even as good as Lu Haoshan just now. Thinking of this, Li Anping grabbed Koto's neck, lifted him up, shook his head and asked, "What's your name? What's your identity in Lone Wolf?" He Koto just smiled, then coughed up a mouthful of blood, and then said, "You are a capable person, right? Do you know that I am also a capable person?" Li Anping's expression changed, and his other hand had already inserted into Koto's chest and grabbed the other's heart. As long as he noticed the other party's slightest movement, he would crush Koto's heart. "You'd better not make any futile attempts. No matter what your ability is, I can crush your heart with just a little force. You should have the ability to survive without a broken heart, right?" Koto's chest was pierced, and he vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood, and his face became more and more depressed. But he still said excitedly, "In the entire Emerald City, no one knows what my ability is. Those who know are all dead. Because of my ability, if you don't understand it, there is no one who can't be killed." Li Anping's expression was solemn, and his hands gradually increased, pinching Koto so hard that he felt a sharp pain. Koto's expression was distorted with pain, but he still said, "Everyone who knew my ability is dead." Cough 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 cough, he coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood again, splashing on Li Anping's body, and said with a pale face, "I told him to transfer the harm, do you understand?" Li Anping's face changed, and he looked at Koto with disbelief, which made him look proud. Koto smiled and said, "Damage transfer, as the name suggests, means that I can transfer the damage I have suffered to other people. And I will be intact." Li Anping said in disbelief, "How can I have such ability?" You don't believe it? Are you still wondering why I told you about my ability?" Koto smiled at Li Anping, his eyes full of pity, "because there are 5 conditions for my ability to be activated. First, my ability must be introduced to the person being transferred. Second, the person being transferred must be exposed to my blood." Li Anping looked at his hands and chest, which were stained with Koto's blood, and shook his head helplessly. Seeing Li Anping's helpless look, Koto smiled even more proudly. Third, the person being transferred must be a living, conscious human being. Fourth, this ability can only be activated once a day. And the fifth, which is the last one, the transfer target must be within 3 meters of me. Before the voice fell, before the word within was finished, Li Anping had already let go of his hand and threw Koto forward with force, and he jumped behind him with all his strength, but it was too late now. At the moment when Li Enping exerted force, Koto's ability had been activated. He just jumped up and was in mid-air, and a heart-wrenching pain spread throughout his body. Li Enping was horrified to find that his body was actually cracked one after another, and the severe pain came like a tide. He fell directly from mid-air and fell more than 10 meters in front of Koto. Then a sound of "sisi" sounded, and blood kept coming out of Li Enping's wound, and a pool of blood formed under his feet in a blink of an eye. Ugh! With another dry retching, Li Enping spat out large mouthfuls of blood. He half knelt on the ground, but found that he had no strength in his body and couldn't even stand up. This sudden change made the twins on the side look stunned, and they had no idea what was going on. Only Koto laughed louder and louder, and he laughed until he was out of breath before stopping. At this time, he was actually intact, whether it was the injuries from Li Enping's previous beating, the dislocated hand, or the wound on his chest, all of them were gone. There was no sign of weakness on his face, and he looked energetic. Except for the messy clothes, he was no different from just coming out of the stage. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang. Chapter 42. You are so cautious. When many people heard the conditions, the first thing they thought of was to kill me. However, after activating their abilities, they were directly transferred to death. This is your ability, Li Enping gasped. He, do you understand? Koto walked towards Li Enping, who was half kneeling on the ground, and picked up a pistol from under his feet. He walked calmly, with a half smile on his face. His eyes looking at Li Enping were full of ridicule. My harm transfer does not mean directly transferring my harm to you. He will also calculate the threat of harm to others. Just like I was fatally injured just now, what you are receiving now is also fatally injured. He walked up to Li Enping, pointed the gun at his head, and said with a smile, your body is really strong. You have lost so much blood and you are still not dead. Are you a person with the ability of the physical mutation system? You are indeed very strong. If we have a head-on confrontation and don't use my abilities, I'm afraid I will be killed by you within 10 seconds. But I just need to activate my ability before I die. Speaking of which, you people with abilities, every time you hear me explain my abilities, you will stop attacking and listen to me obediently. You are really mean. Koto hit Li Enping on the head with the butt of his gun. When he saw Li Enping shaking his head, still half kneeling, he sneered a few times and then hit the opponent's head wildly. It wasn't until Li Enping fell in a pool of blood that he gasped. The anger stopped. Damn it, do you know how much trouble you have caused me? He stepped on Li Enping's head with one foot, crushed it hard, and shouted, if it weren't for you, I would still be behind now. Counting money, thinking about who to play with at night, living my little life happily. Koto kicked Li Enping a few more times, and when he saw the other person's unconscious state, he wiped the blood on his hands and spat on Li Enping again. Energy users are amazing, right? More than 100 people were killed by you. It's so amazing. You won't die in my hands. Idiot, what matters in this society now is IQ. No matter how fast you are or how strong you are, what's the use? While cursing, Koto kept stepping on Li Enping's body. After a long time, when he saw that Li Enping had no reaction, he stopped breathing heavily. He turned his gaze to the twins on the side and looked at them maliciously. You two were sold just last month. Unexpectedly, you have come full circle and come back here again. Seemingly sensing the coldness of Koto's gaze, the two twins hugged each other and trembled. Please let us go, we will serve you well. Please. Koto smiled and walked towards the twins. You are very beautiful, and it's not bad to play with, but you two have also heard about my ability, right? Once everyone else knows about my ability, it's not working anymore. He walked up to the twins and touched their faces again, with a reluctant expression. I have no choice but to kill you. As he said that, he pointed the pistol at the head of one of the twins. But although the twins in their eyes were frightened, something was wrong. The other party's eyes didn't seem to be looking at him. Instead, he looked behind him with a frightened expression. Behind you? Only then did Kato realize that there were bursts of breathing coming from behind him at some unknown time. Jizzing sound? Could it be? Without turning his head, Koto felt a pair of hands grabbing his arm and dragging him backwards. He struggled hard but couldn't get rid of it. The opponent's two hands were like steel claws, pinching his arms respectively, making him he couldn't move. It's you. How come you're not dead? Kato yelled, but the other party didn't reply. Only heavy breathing sounded in the back of his head. Then a strange force came from his arm, and with a click, his left hand was broken, but the opponent did not stop. Amidst Kato's screams, the person behind him continued to exert force, moving his hands to the left and right. Keep pulling. Roar. The person behind him roared. There was another click, and then Kato's hands made a series of sounds like rags being torn apart. His entire left arm was torn off, blood spurted out from the wound on his shoulder, and Kato's head was a mess. Blank, he could only let out a series of screams. What's even more frightening is that a series of weird chewing sounds came from behind Kato. He's eating me. Koto's heart was filled with fear, but it wasn't over yet. Like a toy being dismantled, his right arm was also removed. His eyes turned white, and the severe pain seemed to melt his nerves. He was about to faint from the pain. But the next moment, there was another sharp pain in his chest. A thick arm had passed through his chest, and the palm of that hand was still holding his heart. Then with a little force of his hand, Kato's heart was crushed in front of him. Kato's whole body trembled. He wanted to say something, but no sound came out of his mouth. The weird chewing sound still sounded behind him. At the last moment before his death, his eyes were bulging out of his sockets, his mouth was open, and he still maintained a frightened expression. Li Anping threw his body to the ground, then threw away one arm in his hand. He got down on all fours, his head lying on Kato's pierced chest, and he opened his mouth wide and stretched toward the inside of the chest. At this time, it seemed from his appearance that the injuries caused by the previous injuries had disappeared. Apparently the body's self-healing ability has healed the fatal injury just now. The twin brother and sister in the distance only saw Li Anping lying on Koto's body, his head kept shaking up and down, and his mouth made terrible chewing sounds. The two covered their mouths tightly, fearing that they would attract Li Anping's attention. But when Li Anping raised his head and blood and flesh flowed down the corners of his mouth, he smiled with satisfaction like a devil. One of the twins couldn't help but scream. Following her scream, Li Anping looked over. Those were terrible, desperate eyes, with a trace of blood, full of desire for killing and greed for humans, as if wanting to destroy all the beauty in the world. But the red light in his eyes only lasted for a moment and then stopped. Li Anping stared blankly at the twins who were hugging each other and shaking, and had already cried, with a trace of confusion in his eyes. A few seconds later, he roared and threw the body in front of him out. He stretched out a hand and stretched it towards his throat, as if he wanted to vomit out what he had just eaten, but found that he couldn't do it. Hey! What did you do again? Why am I out of control again? Oh! Didn't I tell you, he sneered, when your body is under fatal threat, my energy will invade your consciousness and awaken the instincts in your body. You will destroy everything in front of you in the most brutal way, and then absorb energy at all costs to make up for your injuries. In short, once you are on the verge of death, you will go berserk. But when I was beaten like that in Zhongdu, why didn't I go berserk? It looks similar, but you were still able to move when you were beaten like that at that time, he said, but it was different just now. The ability of that Indian man is really weird. Although your injuries look similar to the previous serious injuries, they are indeed fatal injuries. The whole body has signs of collapse. If you hadn't stored hundreds of souls in advance to recover from injuries, you would have died long ago. Damn it! Li Anping looked at his bloody hands and remembered what he had done just now. There was still a bloody taste in his mouth, and he felt indescribably irritated, as if he wanted to destroy everything in front of him. He, it's just that you are too weak and inexperienced, otherwise you wouldn't have suffered so much against such a small character, and even went berserk. He laughed and said, but it's a blessing in disguise. You ate this guy's soul and body, and became stronger. Now your strength is 3.5, speed is 2.3, and physical fitness is 4.2. Not only that, your ability has also been upgraded. Now, based on the strength of your ability, without considering your physical strength, you are already a first-level ability user. The so-called pure ability theory means that Li Anping's ability can only kill ordinary people now, and the power is indeed very weak, without considering his physical destructive power. His ability is indeed only at the first level. First level. After saying this, Li Anping did feel the difference in his body. His thinking seemed clearer, and the flow of energy in his body was no longer as obscure as before, and he couldn't even feel it. After clenching his fist, he felt a gas-like energy flowing around in his body. Wherever he exerted force, the energy seemed to flow to that part of his body. Not only that, you can now absorb souls through the air, and you can absorb the souls of ordinary people within 5 meters. Oh, although this was expected long ago, this increase in ability is indeed a qualitative improvement for Li Anping. But although his strength has increased, he still feels unhappy, as if he has eaten a piece of shit in his mouth. After taking a look at the scene, he turned around and walked towards the elevator. You wait here, or you can go and release all the female slaves behind the stage in a few hours. I will completely eliminate the lone wolf, and then I will call the police to come here to pick you up. Before that, you'd better stay here and don't go anywhere. After saying that, Li Anping got on the elevator without looking back. It seems that he is unwilling to face the twins who saw him run away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 43. On a dark night, Emerald City was still covered by a haze. In the foggy sky, not even a trace of moonlight could be found. But the whole city was still illuminated by countless lights. It seemed to declare that even without the favor of God, this crime paradise city could still survive on its own. Tonight, Emerald City was destined to be restless. Li Anping's killing had not stopped since midnight. According to the information revealed by Vicky, Li Anping had wiped out several small bases of lone wolves outside Paradise Street and Diamond Street. Except for those prostitutes, slave girls and children, no one was left. Then he rushed to Diamond Street at the fastest speed. When he killed Koto, the leader of Diamond Street. In this city, someone had already noticed his movements. It was the Special Forces team that had been watching every tree and grass in the city since the 3 major forces started the war. Zhang Chuan of the Emerald City Special Forces was holding a cigarette and leaning against a telephone pole. With a stubble beard and messy hair, if he wasn't wearing the blue and white uniform of the Special Forces, I'm afraid others would only think of him as a middle-aged man who did nothing and accomplished nothing. But the 3 words Special Forces are enough to show his uniqueness. The Special Forces are also called Daxia Dragon Bird, which manages all matters related to people with special abilities in Daxia. But except for the headquarters in the capital, each city has only one Special Forces team. They may be one person or a team. The Special Forces teams in some cities are vague, and ordinary citizens can't feel their existence at all, and have no impression of the development and management of the city. Just like the city of Zhongdu. Some special forces rely on powerful military force to restrict the development of the entire city and affect the life and safety of every citizen in the city. Even the public security system, which is originally at the same level, has to obey their command in many cases. This has something to do with the location of the city, the density of people with special abilities, and the personnel of the authorities. As for the Emerald City, it obviously belongs to the latter of the above two situations. Zhang Chuan was the person sent by the Emerald City Special Service Team to contact Li Enping. A member of the Special Service Team walked up to him and reported, "The person sent by the commander just now sent a message that the underground auction house in Diamond Street has also been destroyed. It is estimated that more than 100 people were killed. Except for some female slaves, there are no survivors. However, most of them were frightened, and it will take some time to pry the news out of their mouths. However, among the dead, we found Koto, one of the leaders of the Lone Wolf, as well as Jiu Lan of the Kailan Group and Lu Haoshan of Zhongai Hall. Koto is just an ordinary person. Jiu Lan is also a loser. Lu Haoshan, although his control is not good, he is also very strong. Being able to kill him shows that this Li Enping is quite capable. Sir, do you want us to?" "No need." Zhang Chuan smiled, threw the cigarette in his hand on the ground, and crushed it with his foot, saying, "I didn't expect that this guy would not give up after making such a big fuss. All of you stay away, prepare anesthetics and strong tranquilizers, it is not easy to handcuff mutants. Also, let the brothers on Paradise Street withdraw, I will catch him myself." The adjutant did not seem to react until Zhang Chuan shouted again, "Go quickly." "Yes, sir." Then he trotted away. Zhang Chuan looked at the high-rise buildings in the distance, where there was an inconspicuous black dot jumping between the buildings, heading towards Zhang Chuan's position. When Li Enping jumped in the building, his eyes looked at a brightly lit building in front of him. That was the base of the Lone Wolf on Paradise Street. Stopping on the roof of a building opposite the building, Li Enping began to observe and think about how to break into the building in the best way. Except for here, other places have been swept. Only 3 hours have passed since dawn. Even if they notice something wrong, they should not be able to evacuate immediately. Next, just kill all the people here. Thinking of this, Li Enping's eyes flashed red again. At this moment, a voice sounded from behind Li Enping, almost scaring him. "Li Enping, right?" Zhang Chuan walked out from a shadow, looked at the surprised Li Enping, and smiled, "Although you are SpecialAbilities subordinate, you have made enough trouble today, right? Come back to the bureau with me." Li Enping immediately took a fighting stance, stared at Zhang Chuan with his eyes and said, "Who are you? I don't understand what you said." "Haha, are you pretending to be stupid?" Zhang Chuan said, "I am Zhang Chuan from the Emerald City Squad of the Dragon Bird of Daxia. You have swept enough of the Lone Wolf's place, right? Come back to the bureau with me before a bigger accident happens. Otherwise, you will get hurt and it will be embarrassing for everyone." "Accident? I killed those scum, is it an accident for you?" Li Enping looked at Zhang Chuan hatefully and said. "Special Service Team, you are also considered police officers, right? You should also be in charge of the crimes of people with abilities, right? Why did the Lone Wolf harm so many people, kidnap so many people, and engage in human trafficking, but you didn't ask? I killed a few of them today, and you came to arrest me. Are you also considered police officers?" Turns out he is a naive kid. After listening to Li Enping's words, Zhang Chuan frowned and looked at Li Enping disdainfully. "Boy, what do you know? Even if the Lone Wolf disappears, there will still be a lone tiger, a lone dog, a lone pig, and an emerald one. The city is naturally a hotbed of crime, and prohibition is impossible. Moreover, the lone wolves know the rules, so they only attack people from small families. They are good at cleaning their butts and will not cause social unrest. It is better for them to be here than for those who are not. People who know the rules will only make the Emerald City a mess if they catch thieves and fight every day. It's ridiculous, Li Anping interrupted Zhang Chuan, because you can't stop it. Why don't you stop it? Because there are too many criminals, you turn a blind eye to the criminals in front of you. You can even tell such nonsense about compromising criminals. Hearing what Li Anping said, Zhang Chuan laughed angrily. He had seen this kind of boy with a strong sense of justice. At the moment, he did not intend to argue with the other party anymore, but directly used force to suppress the other party head-on. Okay, your tone is loud enough. He is obviously a rookie who can't even hide his thoughts, but he still dares to pretend in front of me. I saw Zhang Chuan ignoring the other party's hostility, walking towards Li Anping step by step, and slowly said, "Your mental energy is only the first level, right? He, let you see what I have. I'm going to do it now. I'm curious, after knowing the difference between us, can you say what you just said again?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Li Anping could realize what the other party meant, an extremely cold and malicious aura surged towards him, almost completely covering his entire body. What is this? A flash of light flashed in Li Anping's mind. This feeling is similar to the energy in my body, but why does this Zhang Chuan also have this kind of energy? Seeing Li Anping's silent expression, Zhang Chuan smiled proudly. You are from the mutant system, right? Let me tell you, so am I. You should understand that I, who is also from the mutant system and has a higher ability level than you, it's impossible to defeat. Just the impact of my thoughts has made you unable to move. Now do you wake up and realize the reality in front of you? You call this Nian Qi? Li Anping looked at Zhang Chuan and didn't understand why the other party looked so proud. Although he was hit by the opponent's thought energy, he did not feel the so-called immobility. What neither of them knew at this time was that Li Anping's ability was not the so-called mutant type at all. The so-called mutation system means that the body has mutated and has abilities far beyond those of ordinary people. Li Anping, on the other hand, can absorb other people's bodies and souls to strengthen his own body. Strictly speaking, such an ability should be considered an external one among the 6 major systems. And although his ability is only at the first level, his physical strength has long been far beyond the first level as his physical strength continues to increase. Therefore, although he is not a mutant type ability user, his physical abilities are better than those of the mutant type. Therefore, judging Li Anping's strength based on his ability level will only produce serious errors. Hearing Li Anping's question, Zhang Chuan looked surprised. You don't even know about Nian Qi? How ridiculous. Forget it, it seems that Huang Linjun's information is also nonsense. After all, if SpecialAbilities really accepts you, there is no way he won't tell you. This is common sense. Boy, don't you know SpecialAbilities? I don't know. Li Anping shook his head. Sure enough, Zhang Chuan looked at Li Anping as if he was looking at an idiot, and he laughed happily. You just made me very angry. If SpecialAbilities really protects you, I will not be able to handle it. But since it's not the case, then it won't matter if I beat you half to death and then hand you over to the lone wolf. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglango. Chapter 44. On the other side, long before Zhang Lin and others discovered and stopped Li Anping, they had already sent police officers to monitor the lone wolf's building, but the purpose was. What, you want us to retreat? A police officer in plain clothes said in disbelief. He looked about 27 or 28 years old, and although his face was haggard, he still looked tough. At this moment, he looked at his superior with some disbelief. The middle-aged man in uniform in front of him said, "Okay, Qin Yang, I know you are a little emotional about this because of your brother, but these are orders from above. You have to consider the overall situation and not act on impulse because of a little emotion." "I act on impulse," Qin Yang said angrily. "Just now, at least 2 groups of people each brought a group of women to the lone wolf's lair. Do you want us to watch it? You asked us to watch here in the middle of the night, just to let us escort these scumbags to commit crimes. The middle-aged man did not speak. He naturally would not tell Qin Yang that this was an order from Zhang Chuan's gang. They were sent here not to monitor the lone wolf, but to protect the lone wolf, to stop Li Enping before he caused more trouble. And this involves the division of interests between the lone wolf and the police, which is even more dark and messy. Now that Li Enping's location has been discovered, they naturally don't need to stay here any longer. So he said, I don't need to explain anything to you. You just need to obey orders now. Qin Yang panted and glared at the middle-aged man fiercely, but the other party did not give in. Qin Yang said stubbornly, Chief Zhang, do you want me to watch these scum abuse people? At least I want to go in and rescue them. You have no evidence. Without evidence, I will not send people in to search. Chief Zhang still shook his head and said, Qin Yang, you'd better know who you are. You must take people away now. Qin Yang gritted his teeth and looked at several colleagues around him who kept shaking their heads and winking at him. He was also very conflicted. Morally speaking, he really couldn't just watch a group of criminals get away with it. Every time he faced the parents and relatives of the victims, he felt ashamed. But the officer in front of him is a typical academic, and he has always been somewhat incompatible with a practical man like him. Since he took office, Qin Yang has contradicted him many times. If he doesn't obey orders again this time. Thinking of his meager salary and his increasingly dissatisfied girlfriend, Qin Yang slowly lowered his head. Maybe the passion of youth is still there, but the economic burden and the reality of life can no longer make him pay for his extravagant passion. The middle-aged man, that is, Officer Zhang, looked at Qin Yang with contempt and bowed his head. He had expected the other party to surrender. Seeing this, a few people who usually didn't get along with Qin Yang whispered, if you knew it would be fine, why are you holding on? What kind of hero are you pretending to be? You make us look like bad guys. It seems that you can feel the contemptuous eyes of Officer Zhang, and the colleagues on the side are either gloating, pitying, or sympathetic. Qin Yang clenched his fists tightly without knowing when. Is it really right for me to do this? Qin Yang lowered his head and suddenly thought of his brother. He remembered that night, Qin Wu went out as usual, but never came back. He had always wanted to ask his brother whether he regretted sacrificing himself to punish crime. And in a place like Emerald City, can justice really be served? But at this moment he seemed to have figured something out. Some things might not succeed or have no results. But someone has to do it. His fist slowly loosened, and his voice was not loud but surprisingly firm. Chief Zhang, you take them away, I'll go there myself. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the Lone Wolf's building without waiting for the other party's answer. Only a group of people who were surprised, regretful or angry were left behind. Chief Zhang behind him shouted, Qin Yang, if you go today, don't think about coming back. Seeing Qin Yang's unresponsive look, he stomped his feet fiercely, looked at the men around him and said, what are you looking at, do you all want to help? Why don't you follow me to collect the team? Qin Yang was in plain clothes and did not attract the attention of others after entering the building. He knew that in this place, the identity of a policeman would only cause hostility. With the ruthlessness of the lone wolf, it is not impossible for them to kill the police. Moreover, he has now broken into the opponent's lair. He can only move carefully, hide in the safety passage when others are not paying attention, and then walk upstairs while trying his best to avoid surveillance. He has been tracking the news of the lone wolf for several months. According to the information obtained from the informant, the building has a total of 13 floors, and the floors below the 11th floor have been rented out by the lone wolf as ordinary office buildings. Only the 11th to 13th floors are where the lone wolf is. With years of experience in handling cases and trained skills, he easily sneaked into the upper floors of the building and pushed the door of the safety passage. He found that the doors from the 10th to the 11th floors had been sealed. The elevator must not be taken. There are their own direct elevators above the 11th floor, which is the main defense place of the lone wolf. So he looked around and aimed at the window on the side. Qin Yang opened the window and climbed out. The 10-story building was a bit dizzy to look down. Qin Yang suppressed his fear, walked over the window sill, and climbed in through an open window. As soon as he entered the room, Qin Yang quickly squatted down and took out his pistol. He looked around and found that this was a men's toilet. It seemed that the exhaust fan was broken, so he opened the window for ventilation. At this moment, a phone rang from a single room in the toilet. "Okay, I understand. I know, I'm in the bathroom. Okay, I'll come over now." A man sat on the toilet and hung up the phone helplessly. Suddenly he found the toilet door opened, and a strong man was pointing a gun at him. Qin Yang said coldly, "Tell me the girls you just sent, where are they?" "Brother, don't shoot." "I'll tell you whatever you ask," the big man said nervously. Qin Yang pointed a gun at the man's head, and then asked a few more questions. The man answered fluently, and he didn't know for a moment whether the other person was lying to him. Just when he wanted to knock the man unconscious, he felt a huge force hitting him from behind. He felt a pain in the back of his head, and he fell from behind and fell to the ground. He was dizzy in his mind and could only vaguely see a few people walking in and talking in front of him. He tried to point a gun at them, but found that the gun in his hand had been taken away. One of the men saw that he was still trying to struggle. Another kick hit him. Qin Yang's vision went dark and he lost consciousness. When Qin Yang woke up, he found himself sitting on a sofa with neither shackles nor ropes on his body. He stood up directly. "In front of you is an independent office. Crystal lamps, ivory decorations, and some never-before-seen artworks. The entire office looks over 300 square meters, which is amazingly large. You can only see a desk until you reach the window." A gentle-looking man with eyes sat upright on a chair. He kept flipping through the documents on his desk, as if he didn't notice Qin Yang. Qin Yang wanted to do something, but several strong bodyguards in black around him made him dare not act rashly. "Qin Yang, right," the man with glasses said without raising his head, "you have been following us recently, which is a bit troublesome to be honest. I heard that you don't listen to Chief Zhang. Are you the leader of the lone wolf?" Qin Yang asked. The man with eyes was still reviewing the documents and said, "You can call me right. To be honest, I hate you police. How much money do you want to stop investigating the case? I want you to let go of all the girls in your hands and disband the lone wolf." Ha, Wright smiled, and then the hand holding the pen slammed on the table. Several bodyguards gathered around and stared at Qin Yang fiercely. One of them even took out something from his arms. The pistol was pointed at Qin Yang's head. Qin Yang looked at them fearlessly, and Wright's voice came to his ears. "If you were not a policeman, you would have been sent to a dog cage by me and eaten by dogs." Wright's voice became cold. "I give you the top 10 points of income every year, do you think it is useful for you to come here alone? I can, so even if you have all the evidence about my business now, you can't catch me because the evidence will disappear as soon as it reaches the police station. What is the law? It is just a tool used by superiors to control inferiors. The environment of Emerald City is the general trend. It meets all the conditions for a hotbed of crime. The residents here are used to all this. Do you think you can change it by catching a few thieves? Naively, what you did is not only against me, but also against your colleagues and your leader. You will become the enemy of everyone. Officer Qin, I will give you 2 million now, which is money you will never earn as a policeman for the rest of your life. I only have one request, stop meddling in the lone wolf's affairs." Silence. Qin Yang has not spoken. And Wright seemed to be very patient. He kept looking at the documents and seemed not worried at all that Qin Yang would not agree. It wasn't until Wright felt a little impatient and frowned that Qin Yang slowly said, "My brother, his name is Qin Wu. When he heard this sentence, Wright kept looking at the head of the document and raised it for the first time. He looked at the disappointed Qin Yang, shrugged and said, "I'm sorry about your brother. To be honest, I admire him a lot but he was so excited that we had to deal with him. You know, we don't want to kill a police officer. That means we have to spend a lot of money on your leader. I hope you don't follow in his footsteps. We can resolve this matter peacefully. What about the girls? Officer Chin, it's all business. Many people in Lone Wolf have wives and children. We understand that feeling, but business is business. To be honest, I will donate money to charity in private." Qin Yang sneered. He was not talking, but looked at Wright with disdain. Wright asked, "Are you really not thinking about it anymore?" With a click, the bodyguard pointing the gun at Qin Yang pulled down the safety of the pistol. Looking at his posture, it seemed that as long as Qin Yang said the word no, he would pull the trigger and kill Qin Yang. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiang Lango. Chapter 45. The atmosphere in the office was as dull as dripping water. No one spoke. The only sound that could be heard was the scratching sound of Wright's pen on the document. "Take the money or die." Wright repeated it again, but Qin Yang suddenly laughed out loud, leaving several people stunned. Taking advantage of this stunned moment, I saw him taking a step forward and already dodging the opponent's pistol. Then he folded his hands on the big man's hand. The big man holding the pistol screamed in pain and let go. "Handed." The remaining three big men rushed forward, only to see Qin Yang strangling the neck of the big man holding the gun with one hand, and holding the big man's pistol with the other hand, pointing it at the remaining three people. "Don't even come here." The three of them looked at each other and could only watch Qin Yang retreat, not daring to step forward. Wright stood up behind the desk and glanced at Qin Yang with disgust. "A bunch of trash." Qin Yang blocked his body with his bodyguard and slowly retreated towards Wright. The three bodyguards in front of him only dared to follow step by step, not daring to make the slightest move for fear of being shot. Wright shouted, "Qin Yang, put down your gun now, we still have something to talk about." Qin Yang was unmoved. He moved to the desk, then hit the big man on the neck with the butt of his gun, knocking him unconscious. Then the gunpoint quickly changed and was pointed at Wright behind the desk. "Where are the women you captured now? You can't save them. This is business, not something I can decide alone." Bang! Qin Yang shot the glass behind Wright to pieces and shouted, "Where are they?" Wright didn't say a word, just stared at Qin Yang, as if he wanted to see through his truth, but Qin Yang remained unmoved. He just pointed the gun at Wright's head and turned to look at the three bodyguards from time to time. The atmosphere suddenly became deadlocked here. At this moment, there seemed to be gunshots, and there were shouts and footsteps outside the office. A few minutes later, when the five people in the room were either nervous or worried, the closed office door suddenly opened. Qin Yang turned around and saw a man and a woman appearing at the door. The woman had a bald head and a face. There were tattoos on his body and he looked extremely vicious. When he saw Qin Yang's eyes, he suddenly laughed. "Don't come here." Qin Yang's intuition, which has always been on the front line, told Qin Yang that the man and woman in front of him was very dangerous. He felt like murderous intent was coming, but before he could finish his words, the woman had disappeared. He subconsciously wanted to pull the trigger on Wright, but when his hand tightened, his entire arm was already tied up with a large bundle of hair. He couldn't see clearly who the person in front of him was, so he could only punch the figure blankly, but the next moment he was shocked to find that his hands and feet had been tied up. At this time, he looked up again and found that the person who tied him up with her hair was the bald woman at the door just now, but now she had grown a full head of long hair. 4 to 5 meters of long hair bound his hands and feet, making him unable to move. "Rubbish," the woman said, but without any movement from her, her hair danced like a poisonous snake, swept away Qin Yang's pistol, and then threw him to the ground. He was hit hard on the ground. Qin Yang felt that his bones were about to break, and his whole body ached. On the other side, the three big men just now rushed up, punching and kicking him. Many people rushed in with guns outside the office. Wright ignored Qin Yang on the ground, but smiled at the woman who became bald again. "Miss Tian, thank you very much. If it weren't for your help, it would be really troublesome." The bald woman known as Miss Tian leaned on the sofa and said casually, "Even if I don't come, he can solve it." "I'm just convenient." After saying that, she also looked at the man who came in with him just now. Obviously it is also implying that this man is also a master. At this time, the man was standing behind Wright, expressionless like a robot. In fact, his expression had not changed at all from the moment he entered the door to now. "Haha, thank you," Wright said with a smile. "Miss Tian came here this time, is it Captain Fang's intention?" But Lone Wolf has always remained neutral. "I really can't decide the matter between you and Zhonggai Hall. He's just a businessman. What Captain Fang said will have to wait until our leader comes back." "No problem, we are very patient." As she spoke, the bald woman looked at Qin Yang on the ground. "He is a policeman, right? If you continue to beat him like this, he will be beaten to death." "No way, his name is Qin Yang, and he has been checking us for a while." Wright smoked a cigarette from his arms and said, "He has arrested several of my younger brothers in the past few months." This time he broke in so directly. "Ask me for someone. I'm a businessman, so I can't just give him someone without taking a penny." The bald woman looked at Qin Yang lying in a pool of blood and licked her lips. "What a pity." On the rooftop of the building opposite, Zhang Chuan was lying on the ground covered in blood. His body was covered with open wounds, his hands and feet were twisted in strange ways, and his eyes were full of disbelief and panic. Looking at the black figure on the top of the building, Zhang Chuan murmured, "How is it possible? How could this happen? It is obvious that your mind energy is only at the first level. Why is your physical strength so strong?" "Why?" he asked loudly. "Road." Suddenly, Zhang Chuan thought, could it be that he is not a mutant? Zhang Chuan's guess was correct, but he could never have imagined that because of the special nature of Li Anping's ability, his own ability level could not be used to measure his combat power. As long as he absorbed enough human souls, even if he was only level 0, Li Anping could be invincible. Li Anping looked at Zhang Chuan, who was like a stray dog under his feet, and said coldly, "I have a lot of questions to ask you. Tell me, I can consider not killing you." "What do you want to know?" Zhang Chuan said nervously. The arrogance before rushing over had been beaten by Li Anping at this moment. Thinking of the other party's devil-like body, he couldn't help trembling all over his body. Some people look arrogant and conceited on the surface, but in fact, they are just a layer of skin brought to them by strength, power, wealth, and victory. Once they face failure, face death, and meet people who are stronger than themselves. These people are no different from ordinary people. Some people are naturally proud, no matter how strong or weak they are, no matter who their opponents are, their attitude will not change at all. Zhang Chuan is obviously the former. Although his mind energy is stronger than Li Anping's, and after covering his body, his defense and resistance to attack are far beyond ordinary people, he is still not Li Anping's opponent. Li Anping was like a cat playing with a mouse at the beginning, leaving wounds on him one after another. Finally, after Zhang Chuan's mind energy weakened, he directly beat him into a cripple with a punch and a kick, bringing him into infinite fear. "Tell me, what is mind energy?" The so-called mind energy refers to a kind of energy that only those with abilities above level 0 have. This energy is invisible and cannot be seen by ordinary people, nor can it be detected by any scientific and technological means. Only those with abilities above level 0 can see and feel mind energy. The specific components of mind energy are considered to be a high degree of unity between soul and body. Only by constantly honing one's body, soul, and ability can he improve. After listening to Zhang Chuan's explanation, Li Anping nodded reluctantly. No wonder he could feel the energy in his body before, but never saw the energy of others. He originally thought that this energy was unique to his ability. It doesn't seem so now. He thought of the recoil force on Lu Haoshan's body and the explosive force when he hit him. From this point of view, it was also the effect of mind energy. It's just that he was not a first-level ability user at that time, so he couldn't see the mind energy. Also in Zhongdu, when chasing the three ability users, the other party seemed to be able to sense him from a long distance in addition to sound waves. Li Anping originally thought that this was the other party's combat intuition and experience. Now it seems that this is also the effect of mind energy. However, Li Anping didn't feel any power protection on those three people. It should be that their ability level was too low, so they could only feel the mind energy. Although Li Anping was only level 0 at that time, he had powerful energy in his body, which was equivalent to mind energy. It's just that he couldn't see others. This is also the difference between him and ordinary ability users. In comparison, Lu Haoshan's ability level is higher, and the amount of mind energy is also higher, so he is more durable. Although Kit's ability is weird later, it doesn't take much effort to fight, so I'm afraid he doesn't have mind energy. Yes, his ability must be level 0, and he has no mind energy, so he can hide it from everyone, so that no one knows that he is a person with ability. And his strange ability is indeed suitable for keeping it at level 0 to plot against others. After getting the information about mind energy, a series of thoughts flashed through Li Anping's mind like lightning. On the other side, He in his mind said, so humans have this kind of energy? Mind energy, then the energy in your body now is also considered mind energy. Looking at what he said, it should be this meaning. Li Anping thought, so, the soul energy I absorbed strengthened my body under the effect of my ability, and after my ability was upgraded, my spirit also became stronger, and cooperated with the body to produce mind energy. Mind energy, is it a combination of physical strength and spiritual strength? However, I can only feel the mind energy of others after my ability breaks through level 1, and my spirit and soul are strong enough. Li Anping clenched his fist and felt a stream of energy, that is, mind energy transferred to his fist. He felt that he could control mind energy at will. Where the mind energy is attached, the strength of the body seems to increase. However, the amount of his mind energy is too small now, so this increase is negligible. When attacking Zhang Chuan before, the opponent said that the mind energy was concentrated and used, and the defensive effect was very good. He knew that there must be a lot of information about mind energy, but this is not the place to learn now. He asked again, who are SpecialAbilities and Huang Linjun? You really don't know SpecialAbilities? Zhang Chuan thought for a while and said, SpecialAbilities is a senior member of Daxia Dragon Bird, and is also considered one of the top 3 of Daxia Dragon Bird. And unlike the other two, he has served the royal family before the establishment of Daxia Dragon Bird. So far, it has been more than 50 years. As for Huang Linjun, he used to be in Emerald City, but he should be in the special forces of Zhongdu now. He gave us wrong information, which made us attack you. Everything is his fault. Li Anping did not comment on Jiang Chuan's answer. Zhang Chuan asked nervously, how is it? I've told you everything you want to ask. Let me go. Suddenly, Li Anping turned his head and looked at the building opposite the lone wolf, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. What's wrong? Zhang Chuan asked. There was a gunshot, didn't you hear it? Li Anping saw the other party's dazed look and knew that only his hearing could hear the sound just now. When he was wondering why the gunshots were heard from the other side, a faint voice came from the gunshot. That was the sound he could hear after the glass in the building was broken. Only a faint voice from the other side was heard. "Don't come over. Even if I didn't come, I just did it by chance. Miss Tian," Captain Fang meant, "the matter between you and Hong Gaitang, the leader's decision. He is a policeman, he will beat him to death. His name is Qin Yang, he checked us, you can't just give him the person without charging a penny." There were a lot of fighting and shouting mixed in. Especially the wind was strong between the high-rise buildings. Li Enping didn't hear all the conversations clearly, but he could guess roughly. He turned to look at Zhang Chuan. "Do you know Qin Yang?" Zhang Chuan thought for a moment and quickly said, "He seems to be from the criminal investigation team. What's the matter? What's his relationship with Lone Wolf?" "His brother disappeared when he was investigating Lone Wolf a few years ago, and he seems to be investigating Lone Wolf's affairs during this period." Zhang Chuan asked boldly, "Let me go, I promise we won't go against you again. Whatever you want to do in Emerald City, we can also fully support you. From what you just told me, the senior police, no. Or the special forces, and Lone Wolf has collusion, right?" Zhang Chuan was stunned, and seeing that Li Enping's face had sunk, he shouted, "It's none of my business, it's all their fault. They ask Lone Wolf for money every year, and then they let Lone Wolf do business. I'm just a thug, I've never been involved in this matter. Please, if you don't like Lone Wolf, I'll let them arrest all of Lone Wolf's people when I go back. I promise that this will never happen again." Li Enping ignored him, and just punched him lightly in the chest, ending Zhang Chuan's life. "What are my attributes now? This policeman is better than the previous two. He has much more energy. Strength 3.7, Speed 2.5, Physical Fitness 4.4. There are more than 50 souls for recovery, but it's a pity that too many were wasted in the auction house before." Enough. Li Enping picked up the body on the ground and looked across the building. He listened with his ears tilted, while searching the building of Lone Wolf with his eyes, and then stopped. At this moment, his eyes were looking at the office where Wright was. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 46. On the 13th floor of Lone Wolf's building, in Wright's office, a group of people surrounded Qin Yang and beat him on the ground. Qin Yang's consciousness was blurred. At this moment, he could only hold his head and curl up, instinctively reducing the damage he suffered. On the other side, Wright and the bald woman were sitting on the sofa. Behind them, the cold-faced man like a robot stood there, like a bodyguard. "Then this matter is settled. When the leader comes back, I will inform Commander Fang immediately." Wright took a puff of the cigarette in his hand and slowly exhaled it, without even looking at Qin Yang, who was standing aside. "There are also new dishes this month. I wonder if the soldiers in your group are interested." The bald woman said, "Same as usual, send 10 people over. Those bastards are so energetic every day." "No problem, but it's about the price." Wright saw the fierce look in the other party's eyes and immediately explained, "The girls sent to you a few months ago are basically disabled or crazy when they come back. The soldiers of your group are having fun. But it's a bit crazy, so we still need to adjust the price." "Huh, whatever you want. It's useless to tell me about the specific things. We'll talk to our accountant then." Before she finished speaking, her face suddenly changed, and she and the cold-faced man beside her turned to look at her at the same time. Out the window, amidst the howling wind, there was only a loud bang. A bloody corpse hit the glass of the building, causing cracks. The whole body was embedded in the glass, but the huge impact knocked him to pieces. It was deformed and its original appearance was completely unrecognizable. All that could be seen was the uniforms of the SWAT team flapping in the strong wind. Amidst the exclamations, the cold-faced man had already hugged Wright and hid behind the sofa. The bald woman on the side had already stood up. Her hair, which was more than 5 meters long, was like a dancing snake, covering her whole body. Careful! The bald woman's shouts were drowned in the strong wind. A person has rushed into the building from mid-air. The huge force and the speed that can't be seen by the human eye are like a tornado rushing towards it. First, a whole piece of glass exploded inward. The bodyguard standing near the window was hit by the glass fragments shot out like bullets, and fell down with wounds all over his body. What happened next was a few big men around Qin Yang. The figure passed by them, and they were thrown out like building blocks. One after another, they hit the ground from the broken window like dumplings. Screams rang out in the air like musical notes, but the remaining people in the office could only hear the whistling of the wind. The figure was like an endless storm, rushing towards Right. Court death. The bald woman stood in front of Right and stabbed straight at Li Anping with all the hair on her body. With this move, she once tied a man into skewers through a steel plate and then cut his body into pieces. Seeing her opponent not dodging, a smile appeared on her lips. Roll. Amidst the whistling sound, the bald woman was grabbed by the hair and thrown away. It was not until she came into contact with the other party that she realized how childish her actions were. Her proud ability was not worth mentioning in front of the other party. Her hair was like straw in the opponent's hand, and the astonishing force directly drove her through 5 walls. When she finally stopped, she was already a ball of rotten meat. The bald woman didn't even waste a second on Li Anping. At this time, Right had just stood up, but the cold-faced man behind him had already rushed towards Li Anping and pushed him back. Let's go. The next moment, in a flash of white light, 3 people rushed out of the cold-faced man's body, each stabbing Li Anping with a dagger. Clone, Li Anping exclaimed and took a step back. This was the first time he had taken a step back since he rushed in. Before he knew the other party's abilities, he still chose to be cautious. And just when he took a step back, the 3 people who looked exactly like the cold-faced man had already rushed in front of him. One of them stabbed the heart with the right side, the other stabbed the kidney with the left side, and the third one was circling towards Li Anping's back. The clones of these 3 cold-faced men were skillful in their movements and cooperated with each other as if they were one person. Their killing skills were also honed over time. If Li Anping had just come out of Zhongcheng, he might have had to dodge them. But now Li Anping simply punched forward 3 times. Bang! 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 After 3 consecutive blasts, the 3 clones were blown up by Li Anping in mid-air and turned into white spots of light. As soon as the 3 people died, Li Anping was about to move forward, but he frowned and found that 3 more people rushed out of the cold-faced man's body and rushed toward Li Anping. It looks weird, but it's not very powerful. This time Li Anping was not dodging. He has already experienced the combat power of the clone. There is no mental energy in his body. His quality is slightly stronger than that of ordinary soldiers, but he is neither poisonous nor capable of self-destruction. In his eyes, the speed is even more annoying. Being patient, he had no worries. Li Anping poked his finger and blew up the first clone. Then, without stopping, he walked up to the remaining 2 clones, punched twice in the face, and with 2 bangs, 2 more clones were blown up. But as soon as he finished fighting, he saw 3 clones crawling out of the cold-faced man's body. The other party was obviously determined to hold him back. In the way, Li Anping rushed forward and swept all 3 clones with his cross arm. Then he punched the cold-faced man in the face with his other hand from bottom to top. The opponent's fighting skills have obviously been well trained for a long time, and he has rich fighting experience. He has already made blocking movements based on instinct. Li Anping can even feel the opponent's mind energy rushing towards his hands. Unfortunately, his movements were too slow and too weak compared to Li Anping. As soon as he moved, Li Anping had already punched him in the face. Boom! Like thunder from the sky, his face was covered in blood and flesh, and his head made a muffled sound and had already exploded. Before his body fell, Li Anping had already stepped out and chased him out of the door. When they killed two people in a row just now, the other party tried their best, but to Li Anping, it was just a casual blow. He didn't even use the Nian Qi he just knew about, but his current Nian Qi enhanced him very little. The first level ability users have only just been able to generate mental energy. Compared with the slight enhancement of mental energy to the physical body, the most helpful thing at this stage is the ability to see other people's mental energy. Only level 2 ability users like the snake-haired woman and the cold-faced man just now have more obvious enhancement effects of thought energy. It's a pity that their bodies, which have experienced enhanced mental energy, are still vulnerable to Li Anping's physical body. Help! Shoot quickly! Enemy attack! I saw Li Anping walking out of the office, and someone was already shooting at him. Wright shouted for help while running to the elevator, and at the same time he kept calling for people to kill Li Anping. Bang! 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 Facing the gunman who rushed over, Li Anping looked indifferent. He took one step and jumped 10 meters away. Then he took a step and punched. In the blink of an eye, 4 people fell to the ground, all of them killed by one punch. Sudden. Sudden. A row of machine guns fired at Li Anping. Too lazy to dodge, Li Anping allowed the bullets to hit him. He raised a corpse in front of him and threw it towards the gunman. He killed one of them directly and turned the rest of them into ground gourds. Then he rushed go up and punch each one, and 5 more people will die. As a result, Li Anping was seen chasing after Wright leisurely. No matter who he met on the way or who attacked him, they would all hit him with a straight punch. Either his head would be blown off, or his bones would be shattered and his internal organs would be ruptured. Within a short distance of 100 meters, dozens of corpses had fallen at his feet, and blood covered the corridor, making Li Anping look like a devil. The remaining gunmen also stopped attacking. They all followed Wright in fear, watching in fear as Li Anping walked slowly. Wright didn't move either. He knew that facing this kind of monster, there was no possibility of success either in escaping or resisting. "Brother, you have something to say. If you have offended me in any way, I apologize to you. If you have any requests, you can make them." Li Anping did not answer, but speeded up in an instant, rushing in front of Wright like a phantom. Then before the gunmen could react, their vision went dark. Within 5 meters, all souls had been absorbed by Li Anping, and they seemed uninjured. But already dead. The air-to-air absorption is faster than expected, and there is almost no difference in speed from the absorption after contact. Black, what about efficiency, is there any loss? About half of it was lost, which is half less than the soul absorbed after contact. If you don't want to waste it in the future, you can absorb it when you kill it in the end. It can be regarded as hiding a trump card. Li Anping nodded, feeling the power flow out of his body endlessly. He had just absorbed 2 more ability users. His strength increased again, reaching strength 3.8, speed 2.7, and physical fitness 4.5. Looking at Wright, who was shaking all over, he said, "Are you the leader of the lone wolf?" Wright looked at Li Anping's murderous look. His legs weakened and he knelt down. No. No. I'm just responsible for contacting the business." So where are your heads? He went to Black Dragon Mountain. Every month at this time, he has to go there. Seeing Li Anping frown, Wright immediately defended loudly, Really, I didn't lie. I'm not in the same group as them. I'm not an Indo-Western person. My name is Ye Wenbin. I'm from Daxia. I was forced to come here to manage their business. If I don't agree, they will kill me. I was also forced." Li Anping nodded and said, "Wait for me here, I have to go down again. By the way, the 2 floors below are all your people, right? Right, or Ye Wenbin nodded and couldn't help but ask, what are you going down for? Kill people. Li Anping looked at Ye Wenbin and said, I will kill all the lone wolves one by one. Ye Wenbin was so cold that he felt cold. He walked a few steps, but suddenly turned around, looked at Ye Wenbin's trembling appearance and said, when I kill them all, you won't run away by yourself, right? I won't run away. Really, please spare me. Business, it's all business. I have never forced a girl into prostitution, it's all they're doing. I'm just here for business. Then, regardless of the opponent's resistance, struggle, and screams, Li Anping directly interrupted Ye Wenbin's hands and feet before walking towards the elevator. On this day, screams and gunshots resounded throughout the building, and even later there were explosions of suspected bombs or grenades. The staff who rented the office downstairs had already escaped. Soon someone called the police. When the police and the special forces arrived, they could only see corpses and blood plasma all over the floor. Countless lone wolf members were twisted into a ball and thrown on the ground. The entire 11th and 12th floors seemed to have turned into hell. The only survivors on the scene were the unconscious Jin Yong and the girl who was locked up on the 12th floor. The police immediately sent them to the hospital and completely blocked the information on the scene. Even in Emerald City, this cruel and horrific crime scene is the first time. If it is spread to the public, it may cause huge riots and have a serious adverse impact on social stability. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Lango. Chapter 47. In an office in a building. Han Wei, the captain of the Emerald City Special Service Team, was looking at the documents in front of him. Sitting opposite him was Mo Kaiyan, another vice captain and top thug. Han Wei put down the document in his hand, sighed and said, what do you think? Mo Kaiyan smiled, let out a breath, and stretched out, as if he was tired from sitting here. It wasn't until he saw Han Wei frowning that he said with a smile, it's useless for you to ask me, don't you already have the answer in your heart? Just tell me the name and I will beat whoever you ask me to beat. Humph, how many times have I told you that political problems cannot be solved by fighting? Force is the last resort and the lowest method. Looking at Mo Kaiyan's indifferent expression, Han Wei shook his head. He shook his head and said, do you think the person who took action to wipe out the lone wolves this time is Li Anping? Li Anping? He's just a nobody. Even if he is indeed found at the scene, it can only mean that he is related to the murderer. It is very likely that he was taken over by SpecialAbilities, just like Huang Linjun said. Mo Kaiyan said decisively, among the people who died this time, Lu Haoshan had a brain problem and is not worth mentioning. The snake-haired woman, the clone man and Zhang Chuan all had second levels. In such a small city, in terms of fighting, it's not easy to deal with. Not to mention there are hundreds of heavily armed criminals. But from the evidence collected at the scene, it seems that there is only one person. The best among masters. What's even more frightening is that this man killed them all with his bare hands from beginning to end. Either he is a mutant type ability user, or his abilities are too famous and he is afraid of being recognized. If it is the first type, if he can fight bullets with his body, he is at least a third-level ability user. As for the second type, it is even more terrifying. He killed these people purely with the power of his mind and body. This kind of person can never be an unknown person. Humph, you said you wouldn't say anything, but then you said so much. Mo Kaiyan smiled, isn't that what you asked me? If you put it this way, is it really Xiaolai who came empty-handed? Han Wei said to himself. I don't know about that. You have nothing to do. I have to leave first. We are halfway through the card game. Mo Kaiyan stood up and stretched again, but there are possible characters in the Emerald City, are not present. There are many masters in Baiyu and Fulun in the south, but there is no reason for them to do this. The possibility of coming is very low, except for Xiaolai Kong, who can kill so many people and leave no one alive. I prefer vendetta. The lone wolf has offended so many people over the years, so it's not surprising that he was killed. Han Wei did not answer, and thought to himself, if it is really Xiaolikan who took action from hiding in the dark, does it mean that the situation in the north has become so tense? Need to reorganize the rear, concentrate forces, and be ready for a decisive battle at any time? But why should Zhang Chuan be killed? If you want to rectify the situation and shake things up, you shouldn't kill your own people. And compared to Lone Wolf, Kylan Group, Violet, and Zhongai Hall are better targets. Could it be that someone is investigating human trafficking? Then we shouldn't kill everyone. It shouldn't be Xiaolikan. Is it really a vendetta? Thinking of this, Han Wei suddenly said, wait, you go to Black Dragon Mountain now. Huh, Mo Kaiyan was about to walk out of the office. He stopped when he heard this, looked back at Han Wei and said, what's wrong? Who are you trying to kill? Wright's body has not been found. No matter who is the person who killed Lone Wolf, he most likely asked Wright to take him to the Black Dragon Mountains to find Kano. Mo Kaiyan smiled excitedly, what do you want me to do? No matter what the reason is, since there are no lone wolves left, Kano knows too much, so he can only give up, but Zhang Chuan cannot die in vain, and before he died, he went after Li Enping. Thinking of this, Han Wei smiled ferociously and said, Kano knows too much, kill him. If you meet Li Enping and he is the only one, kill him. Catch him. Haha, aren't you afraid of Xiaolikan? Or other people who kill Lone Wolf? Li Enping is suspected of murder. It is only natural to arrest him and hold him accountable. Even if Xiaolikan wants to blame me, he can't blame me, let alone other people. After all, even if the lone wolf is dead, even Zhang Chuan is dead. If we don't move activity, other people really thought we were going to die. Besides, if Li Enping was really the only one to go, that means he was also given up. After all, I am also the special service captain of Emerald City. How could the person who killed me not give me an explanation? At the same time, the situation in the Emerald City is changing. Ordinary people may not know it yet, but some powerful people already know that the lone wolf has been uprooted and all its members have been killed. Especially in this killing, members of the Zhongai Hall and the Kylan Regiment both suffered casualties. The three major organizations, which were already fighting fiercely, are now even more at odds with each other. Various conflicts and contradictions cannot stop. So all kinds of rumors and gossip were flying all over the place. Now the entire Jade City is like a powder keg, ready to explode. I am afraid that as long as there is a slight mistake, the three major organizations will immediately become a war, turning the entire Emerald City into a battlefield. In a private house in Emerald City, Ye Wenbin was panting. His limbs were broken and he could only lie on the bed. Li Enping was sitting next to him surfing the internet. The decoration of this private house is average and the size is an ordinary two-bedroom. Judging from the layout of the room, there is only one single man living there. However, this man seems to have been away from home for a while. I wonder if he is on a business trip or traveling. In any case, this environment was suitable for Li Enping, so he temporarily brought Ye Wenbin here. He was searching the internet for information about lone wolves. It was already daytime the next day, but it seemed that the police had completely blocked all relevant information. There was no information about the massacre at the building or auction house. So what needs to be considered now is whether the leader of the lone wolf knows that his organization has been wiped out by Li Enping. If he knew, would he run away? What is your leader's name? What kind of person is he? He turned to ask Ye Wenbin on the bed. Ye Wenbin trembled when he heard this. He is still pale even now, obviously frightened by Li Enping's murderous methods. Especially when his limbs were broken by the other party, he was not a tough guy in the first place, so he immediately replied, his name is Kano, and he is also an Indo-Western man. He is very short and dark. This man has a very violent and cruel personality. There once was a very obedient slave girl, no. The girl bit him on the lower body and was thrown into a dog cage to feed the dogs. I'm not asking you this. Li Anping waved his hand and said, let me ask you one by one. How do you usually contact each other? Where does he usually go? He usually contacts me on the phone. As long as I make a lot of money every month, he usually doesn't interfere too much with my management. Usually when he comes over, he will ask me if I can get some girls. Most of them didn't come back. Ye Wenbin thought for a while and then said, as for where he usually lives, I don't know. After all, I am not an Indo-Western person. If I don't agree with them, they can't tell me all the security issues. I only know that he lives on these days every month. She always goes to Black Dragon Mountain and doesn't answer anyone's calls. There are other times when I know that he is usually having fun in nightclubs and hotels. He is also very lustful and has a woman with him basically every night. Black Dragon Mountain. Li Anping's hand tapped the table rhythmically, not knowing what he was thinking. Black Dragon Mountain is a large mountain range located northwest of Emerald City. Because the entire mountain range looks like a giant dragon lying prone, it is called Black Dragon Mountain. The mountains are shrouded in clouds and mist all year round, and the land is barren and has no special products. Basically there are no residents nearby and the scenery is average, so few people go up the mountain. Do you know why he goes to Black Dragon Mountain? Li Anping didn't understand why Kano went to Black Dragon Mountain every month. The Emerald City in Heilong Mountain is 70 to 80 kilometers away. We have to go back and forth every month, and we have to go up the mountain. Isn't it very troublesome? And from Ye Wenbin's previous words, it seems that Kano doesn't manage Lone Wolf's business very much, he just enjoys himself and is greedy for money and lust. Why would such a person go to the mountains to live for a few days every month? No one has contacted him yet. I don't know. They don't allow me to ask. Seeing Li Anping's dissatisfied look, Ye Wenbin quickly explained, no one in the entire company knows. And Kano is not allowed to ask. Kano, is he the only one going? No, it's not. He has 4 bodyguards around him to protect him. It is said that these 4 people were the first to break out with him from the Indo-Western region. They were adopted by him when they were young, and they have a lifelong friendship with him. These 4 people, when Kano is with him every day, he will give them the same portion of whatever he wants to do or eat. He became happy when he heard the news. 4 bodyguards, don't worry about letting such a few people protect you. There must be at least 2 ability users among them. Hey, some more have been eaten. If we continue at this rate, it won't be long before we have nothing to worry about. Li Anping asked again, are there people with abilities among these 4 people? No, since even you are protected by people with abilities, I should ask how many people with abilities there are among these 4 people, and what are their abilities? Also, Kano, is he capable? I don't know about Kano. As for the abilities of the other 4 people, I don't know very well. Seeing Li Anping stand up, Ye Wenbin was startled. Wait, let me think, I think about it. Yes, I remembered it. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xiong Go. Chapter 48. Only once, a new member of a small gang provoked Kano in a nightclub, and he was stabbed to death by one of the bouncers with a flying needle. Flying needles, Li Anping said thoughtfully. It is difficult to determine what the opponent's ability is by just flying needles, and even ordinary people can do it. In particular, there are 5 people on the other side. In the worst case scenario, all 5 of them are ability users with unknown abilities. This is obviously the most troublesome. Is there anything else special? About Kano, or his 4 men, anything, as long as you think it's special. To be honest, I don't know much, but he has been asking me for girls more and more recently. Especially the most recent time, he evacuated all the people in a building and took all the girls away himself. I don't know where he went or what he thought. After Li Anping listened, he thought thoughtfully. It seemed that the stronghold he went to first was the one evacuated by Kano. Ye Wenbin said a few more things, but they were of little use to Li Anping. Suddenly he had an idea and said, there was a rumor in the past that Kano believed in the shadow cult, and he went to Black Dragon Mountain to worship the Black God. This information immediately caught Li Anping's attention, because this was not the first time he heard this news. I remember that when he interrogated the trafficker driver on the highway, the other party also said this. How many people know about the shadow cult? So Li Anping asked, and do you know where this rumor came from? Is it widely circulated? Although no one has believed in the shadow cult for decades, 100 years ago the entire Emerald City believed in the Black God. Later it was discovered that this cult had human sacrifices and wanted to rebel, so Daxia sent troops to destroy this cult. Even though they were wiped out, there are still many shadow cult ruins and temples in the Emerald City, and most of the older people here know about it. At this point, Ye Wenbin thought about it carefully and said, as for this rumor, it was started when a Kano man got drunk and boasted to his men about how powerful the Black God was. But later on, it became more and more evil. Even outside, he becomes a lone wolf and kidnaps girls, killing them for sacrifice. It's so unreliable. Next, Li Anping interrogated Ye Wenbin repeatedly, but he made full use of the interrogation book he read. However, this Ye Wenbin was obviously a weakling, and Li Anping explained everything without any effort. Now it seems that Lone Wolf's forces have been basically wiped out by him, and the only ones left are the leader Kano and 4 of his men who are still in Black Dragon Mountain. After spending about 2 hours, Li Anping asked Ye Wenbin again and again for all the information he wanted to ask about, such as his abilities, strongholds, and Lone Wolf's business. After making sure that there were no omissions, Li Anping took Ye Wenbin away regardless of Ye Wenbin's begging for mercy. Go out. He said, don't you want to ask any more questions? If there are really 5 ability users, maybe you will be tricked and you will really die. Li Anping replied, according to Zhang Chuan and Ye Wenbin's description, I basically have no problem dealing with 2nd level ability users now. As for the 3rd and 4th levels, you will only know after playing them. The enemy's abilities are unknown, so this should be normal. I'm afraid most of the battles between ability users are conducted without knowing the abilities of the other party, right? Therefore, to participate in the battle of ability users, you must first be prepared to face any unknown ability users. Just like with that auction guy. He just smiled, but he was secretly surprised. Li Anping, this guy's potential, no, or maybe it's instinct, is he gradually awakening? It's amazing. In just a few months, he has become more and more familiar with fighting and killing. I really didn't choose the wrong person, it won't take long. Li Anping walked into the parking lot, looked around, and found a person walking out of a sports car. He smiled, walked toward the person with Ye Wenbin on his back, and waved hello to the person. The man looked at Li Anping warily, and when he saw Li Anping's dress clearly, he showed a hint of disdain. Li Anping didn't take it seriously. He just pretended not to see it and passed him by. At the same time, a hand shadow passed behind the man. Touching the car keys in his pocket, Li Anping laughed. Sure enough, as he thought, his hands were too fast, and ordinary people were unable to resist. Even if he took out the things in his pocket in front of others, no one else would know. After the man left, Li Anping took out the car keys, opened the door of the sports car, and threw Ye Wenbin into the passenger seat. He got into the driver's seat. Hey, you don't have a driver's license, do you? Can you drive like this? Don't worry, I just read some information online, it should be fine. As Li Anping spoke, he started the car, pulled the handbrake, and shifted gears. The sports car slowly hit the road, and it seemed to look the same. At least Ye Wenbin on the side didn't see that Li Anping was a novice at all. It was obvious that his reflexes and body coordination were no longer human. After Li Anping got on the road, while driving, he stretched out his hand and took out a mobile phone from Ye Wenbin's arms beside him, and said to Ye Wenbin, "If I want to contact Kano now, which number should I call?" Ye Wenbin reported a series of phone numbers and asked, "What do you want to do?" "Now they are on Black Dragon Mountain. Only the bodyguards will answer the phone. I can't contact Kano." Li Anping did not speak. He just dialed the number and turned on the speaker. Then he said, "Tell them that the lone wolf was attacked and you escaped alone. Ask them to pick you up. Also, don't say anything extra. I'm listening." While he was talking, the call was connected. Ye Wenbin glanced at Li Anping, swallowed his saliva, and shouted to the phone, "Hello. Is that Lal? I'm being chased now." At this time, the sports car had already been on the elevated road. Li Anping had been keeping a speed of 80 miles per hour, neither fast nor slow. The place he was driving was the northwest of Emerald City, in the direction of Black Dragon Mountain. In an empty cave in Black Dragon Mountain, candles were inserted all around, and the air was filled with a certain strange fragrance. When people smelled it, they felt excited and excited. There were also various patterns of unknown meaning painted on the walls of the cave. Under the flickering candlelight, it gave people a creepy feeling. Bai Tingting opened her eyes and saw the environment in the cave again. There was only numbness in her eyes. She hoped that everything before was just a nightmare. 2 months ago, she came to the bar with her boyfriend. She didn't know who gave her the wine. She was in front of her eyes. When she woke up again, she was locked in a dirty cell. The windows of the cell had been sealed. There was a small opening at the door. Every day, someone would send food from this opening. It was all leftovers. Bai Tingting would only eat a few bites of nausea when she was very hungry. After a few days, she was not full but not starved to death. It was impossible to distinguish between day and night in the cell. In addition to her, there were several girls in the room who were tied up in the past few days. Until one day, a group of big men came and raped them all. Such days lasted for several days. Those men spoke words he couldn't understand, ignored their pleas for mercy, pressed them on the bed roughly, raped them repeatedly, and then ejaculated in their bodies. That period was really worse than death. In despair, she wrote her name in the cell with blood. But then she knew what real hell was. After dinner, Bai Tingting fainted again. When she woke up, she had arrived at this cave. She found herself gagged and tied to an iron pillar. Around her, there were dozens of girls tied up like this. In addition to them, there were 5 men coming in and out of the cave, also speaking words they couldn't understand. These 5 men were very fierce. As long as they found that they were communicating with each other, they would beat them up. However, these men rarely raped them. Only the middle-aged man who was short and dark in the lead had caught a few girls and insulted them. Bai Tingting didn't know how long she had been in the cave, maybe a few hours, or maybe a few days. Suddenly she found that the girls around her were taken out one by one. Fear spread in the cave, and the girls exchanged glances with each other, and they might see only fear and numbness. Finally, Bai Tingting was the only one left in the cave. She was also given anesthesia and moved to the stone platform of another cave. Here, she finally saw the girls in the original cave. Just behind the stone platform, their heads were cut off and inserted on poles one by one. Not only them, but there were densely packed heads together, and there seemed to be hundreds of them. These heads seemed to have been carefully taken care of, and none of them had decayed. They kept their appearance when they were alive, with their mouths wide open and their expressions twisted, either fearful, desperate, or resentful. They surrounded a huge black stone statue, occupying half of the cave like a horrible nightmare. Next, the 5 men raped her again on the stone platform, and then the remaining 4 men left, leaving only the short man in the lead kneeling in front of the stone statue, chanting a spell he couldn't understand, as if telling the stone statue something. In the rustling sound, in the shadow of the cave, something seemed to be coming out. Those were groups of black ghost fires, the flames floating in the air, looking weird and abnormal. Under the command of the short man, they slowly approached Bai Tingting on the stone platform. Although they were very close, Bai Tingting could not feel the slightest heat. Then the short man danced and suddenly roared, and the ghost fires rushed up and began to burn Bai Tingting. Although it was burning, Bai Tingting could not feel the temperature. She only felt that it was a pair of mouths, eating away her body piece by piece, which was more painful than death. But Bai Tingting could only watch her body being burned into nothingness bit by bit. The severe pain came in waves, and she wanted to scream, but she couldn't scream. Even coma and death became a luxury. Until the ghost fire burned her body to ashes, leaving only a head, she still did not die. A strange force kept her awake, which was worse than death. Then the short man laughed strangely and inserted her head on the pole. Bai Tingting felt a huge suction coming from the direction of the stone statue, as if it was going to suck her soul away. Finally, her eyes went black and she finally lost consciousness. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang. Chapter 49. In the cave, under the flickering candlelight, the expression of the short man, the leader of the lone wolf, Kano, was gloomy. In order to complete the ritual of offering sacrifice to the black god, he had been patient for too long and dormant for too long, and finally waited for this day. Just a little bit, so he couldn't bear it anymore. He ordered people to send all the female slaves in a stronghold, and then killed them with the most cruel ritual. Only souls that are tortured, full of pain, resentment, and fear are the favorites of the black god. Originally, it was once a month, with only a few girls at a time, but he completed the last dozens of girls within a month. So, the ceremony was finally successful. On the stone statue of the black god, his eyes emitted endless black light, and the black light shone on Kano. He felt that his body seemed to be filled with something, and endless power burst out of his body. He never felt that he could be so strong. Success. Finally succeeded, Kano's face flushed, and he laughed excitedly. I finally have this power. Ability, I am finally no longer immortal. In order to have ability, to no longer be immortal, to have extraordinary power, Kano has really struggled for too long. Now that he succeeded, he couldn't help but cheer. A huge amount of mind energy emerged from Kano's body, almost covering the entire cave, and even slowly rushed out of the cave. The 4 men outside the cave looked at the huge amount of mind energy coming out of the cave at this moment. It was full of malice and chilling, like the breath in the deepest part of hell. They all showed fear in their eyes at this moment. What kind of monster is this? I have never heard of such a thing. It should only be a natural ability, but the ritual of the black god can really give humans abilities. The amount of this mind energy has far exceeded the 2nd energy level, the 3rd level. No, if it continues to grow at this rate, it may have reached the 4th energy level. The 4 looked at each other, looking at the direction of the cave in disbelief, as if it was the entrance to the underworld. Inside the cave, Kano's laughter finally stopped. At this moment, the stone statue of the black god no longer glowed. Feeling that the power in his body stopped growing, he closed his eyes and slowly felt the changes in his body. Let me see what kind of ability it is. The power flowed through his body, and inexplicable information flashed through his mind. A wave of mania and bloodthirstiness from the bottom of Kano's heart surged out. It was not until 10 minutes later that he opened his eyes and smiled. Interesting, really interesting. At this time, a big man outside the cave walked in. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Kano frowning. He just waved his hand in the air, and the big man was knocked out and hit the wall. He spit out a mouthful of blood and looked at Kano in disbelief. When was the attack just now? Kano looked at him and snorted coldly, "Didn't I say that you can't come in without my order?" Somehow, Kano's eyes at this moment made the big man feel unspeakable palpitations. He replied, "I dared to come in only because I saw that your power had stopped growing. The main reason was because of a call from the Special Forces team. MaleProtagonist was already at the foot of the mountain and wanted to see us. Oh. They really have been following me every month, but it's a pity that they can't find this cave." Kano laughed, and a burst of yin energy emanated from his short body. "Then bring him here." Bring him here? But here the big man asked in doubt. Bang! Kano waved his hand again, and the big man was directly knocked out of the cave, and then he climbed up awkwardly with the help of his companions. Kano's voice came from the cave, "Don't let me repeat my order a second time." MaleProtagonist waited at the foot of the mountain for almost an hour. Just when he was a little impatient and was about to make another call. Finally, a big man with a face full of flesh came out of the woods. MaleProtagonist squinted at the other party. He knew that the big man was called Suomi, one of Kano's personal bodyguards. According to the speculation of the Special Forces, he should also be a person with special abilities. However, his strength is average, probably between the first and second energy levels. After all, masters with mental energy are generally able to restrain their mental energy. Judging from their appearance, their strength can only be estimated. Suomi waved his hand, said nothing more, and ran into the woods. MaleProtagonist didn't say anything either, just followed closely. Suomi didn't go far either. When he saw MaleProtagonist coming in, he began to lead the way forward. The two of them were only 3 or 4 meters apart, and walked towards Kano. Speaking of which, the Special Forces team collects Kano's money every year, so naturally they will not give up monitoring him. They know that he comes to Black Dragon Mountain every month, but Black Dragon Mountain is shrouded in haze all year round, making it very difficult to search. The Special Forces team tried to track Kano and his group several times, but all ended in failure. In this kind of terrain, unless the other party is determined to slow down for you to follow, or there is a person with detection abilities, it is impossible to track the other party. The two walked step by step in the forest. As time passed, they walked further and further away. The field of vision was covered by fog. They could only see a few dozen meters away. In this environment, even MaleProtagonist had a sense of direction. He found that Suomi was the same, but every few steps, he would stop and look, as if there was some mark. No wonder, if such a place is not marked, even they themselves will get lost. And if they use the mind to sense the specific direction, at least MaleProtagonist does not have such a large range of perception, and I don't know who has it. However, the mind is related to the spirit. If the other party is hostile to him, he can feel it even if it is hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters away, but he can't sense the specific direction. After walking for about 10 minutes, MaleProtagonist suddenly stopped looking at the cave in front of him. When he stopped, Suomi in front of him seemed to feel it, and also stopped and turned his head to look at him. Suomi's eyes flickered a little. "Why don't you go?" "Humph, it seems a little dangerous." MaleProtagonist looked at the entrance of the cave with a mysterious look in his eyes. If there are people with abilities above level 0 here, they can see where MaleProtagonist is standing. As long as they take another step forward, there will be large patches of black mind, which are full of malice, looking at MaleProtagonist like a beast with fangs and claws. Suomi sneered, "Why, don't you dare to come in. MaleProtagonist smiled, stepped out directly, and walked towards the cave. Mind energy is also a kind of energy. In addition to enhancing ability, it also has offensiveness from the third energy level. Especially for the one in the cave, both the quantity and quality show the strength of the opponent. It is even possible that he is a fourth level ability user. However, unlike those amateur ability users, MaleProtagonist, as a real warrior, never equates the ability level of the opponent with strength. A high ability level is indeed very powerful and a great advantage. But strength is not just about who has a higher level. Physical strength, physical skills, speed, combat experience, special abilities, or weapons can all affect the balance of victory or defeat, but they cannot be measured by simple ability levels. So fighting is never just a simple comparison of who has more mind energy and a higher ability level. Only those ordinary people who have not been trained to become ability users will have such a simple idea. And MaleProtagonist has absolute confidence in his own strength. The master in the cave looks very strong, but he does not think that the other party can eat him to death. In other words, he has long been accustomed to fighting any unknown ability user. MaleProtagonist entered the cave, and Suomi followed him, as if he was afraid that he would run away. MaleProtagonist did not react to this. The cave road was shorter than MaleProtagonist imagined. After walking about 50 meters, he saw that the space gradually became larger, and there was a faint light shining in front of him. A stone statue appeared in front of MaleProtagonist. There was also a stone platform in front of the statue. At this time, a short man was standing in front of the stone platform with his arms folded, looking at MaleProtagonist with a playful look, and giving a look like appreciating prey. He was naturally Kano. There were 3 other bodyguards of Kano in the cave. After MaleProtagonist came in, they blocked MaleProtagonist with Suomi and blocked the way out of the cave. The 4 people looked alert and looked at MaleProtagonist with a covetous look. Unlike Kano, their faces were full of tension and scrutiny. The man in front of him was known as the strongest ability of the Emerald City Special Forces. It was said that one person could match the combat power of a team of ace special forces. If it were normal times, Suomi and the other 4 would never dare to have any thoughts about him, and they would not even have time to escape. But now it was Kano's request, so they had to bite the bullet. Just as the 4 were thinking, a murderous intent came over them. Kano, those girls behind, you'd better tell me they are all fake. MaleProtagonist's voice sounded in the cave. Unlike before, his voice was so cold that it seemed to condense the air. When Suomi and the other 4 heard it, they felt their scalps tingling and the hairs on their backs stood up. He, MaleProtagonist, you came just in time, Kano laughed. Facing the shocking murderous intent that burst out from MaleProtagonist and the mental energy that surged from his body, Kano seemed not to see it. These heads were taken down one by my own hands. Before they died, they had to be tortured and humiliated constantly. Only with such souls would the Black God be satisfied. It really took a lot of effort to say it. Kano smiled and said to MaleProtagonist, but their deaths are worth it. They gave me godlike power. Now I die. MaleProtagonist shouted angrily and appeared in front of Kano. His fist wrapped in layers of mind energy hit Kano's cheek. Kano's cheek was squeezed and deformed a little bit by the fist, and then his head tilted, and the whole person was knocked out. Huh. At the foot of the Black Dragon Mountain, Li Enping's eyes in the sports car seemed to look through the heavy rocks, grass, and haze, and looked in the direction of the cave. He seemed to have heard something just now. But after listening carefully, he couldn't hear anything. Shaking his head, Li Enping looked at Ye Wenbin in the passenger seat and asked, has the call not been connected yet? I've already reached the foot of the mountain. Not yet, I don't know why, it keeps ringing but no one answers. Ye Wenbin was sweating nervously and looked at Li Enping for help. Li Enping stopped the sports car, picked up the phone, and called again, but it still kept ringing but no one answered. If this goes on, I can only kill you, and then get off the car and go up the mountain to find them. Don't kill me, Ye Wenbin said in panic. I'm useful. You can't find them by yourself. They are in a very secret location on Black Dragon Mountain. No one knows except themselves. And there is fog all year round on the mountain. It's easy to get lost if you go in alone. No one answered the call again. Li Anping sighed and could only call again. After trying several times, all with the same result, Li Anping was a little impatient. But now, apart from this call, Li Anping has no other way to contact the other party. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 50. In the cave, mud splashed and the air exploded in an instant. Kano had already flown out and crashed into a pile of rubble. But before Mo Kaiyan could make the next move, 4 hostile voices came from behind him at the same time. The 4 people, Suomi, who had just stood behind him, had already attacked him. The first one to take action was Suomi. He was the strongest and had the fastest reaction among the 4. Within 0.5 seconds of Kano being knocked away, he had already activated his ability. He kicked his feet and rushed up. What was even more amazing was that his upper body muscles swelled violently, and he actually tore his clothes into pieces, and then he grew lush black hair, and even his entire head deformed, with prominent cheekbones and thick hair, and he turned into a half-human, half-beast appearance, and punched Mo Kaiyan's back of the head. This is Suomi's ability, Animal Transformation. In this state, his strength and explosive power are doubled, and he is not afraid of pain, and he is not afraid of death. At the same time, within 0.1 seconds, another person besides Suomi threw a needle towards Mo Kaiyan's vest. The needle was so fast and powerful that it was no less powerful than a bullet. What's more terrifying is that this needle did not fly in a straight line, but moved in an arc under human control, making it difficult to dodge. After the needle and the punch, 2 equally fierce attacks broke out behind Mo Kaiyan. Within a second, 4 of Kano's bodyguards, all of whom were capable people, launched an attack on Mo Kaiyan at the same time, and Mo Kaiyan had just turned around at this time. If ordinary people faced this kind of attack, they would probably die before they could even react. But they were facing Mo Kaiyan, who was a powerful, capable person who was far superior to them, and had received systematic training and Daxia Lonke training, without any shortcomings. Although he was very angry about what Kano did, Mo Kaiyan did not lose his composure. However, before he threw that punch, he had already expected that the 4 people behind him would definitely attack. Suomi and the other 4 were loyal to Kano. Seeing their master being beaten, how could they not fight back? At the same time as the 4 attacked, he also began to fight back. Swish! Among the 4 attacks, the first to arrive was the flying needle. Although Suomi's reaction was faster, it was obvious that his sprint speed was far less than that of the flying needle controlled by others. The person who controlled the flying needle was named Lal, and he had some ability to control metal. However, he could neither deform the metal nor control too much metal. He could only move some small objects. But this ability used on the flying needle, combined with the throwing technique, has already had amazing power. Facing the needle shot at him, Mo Kaiyan actually stretched out his hand. He wanted to catch the opponent's flying needle with his bare hands. What was amazing was that his hand was so fast that he blocked it in front before the flying needle shot. Lal had not expected that someone would catch his flying needle with bare hands. A hint of pride flashed in his eyes. With the thought, the flying needle turned and suddenly stabbed upwards towards Mo Kaiyan's forehead. He had absolute confidence that even if Mo Kaiyan used his mind to block his forehead, this needle could still pierce his brain. His flying needle had pierced the glass of a bulletproof car and killed the target. He did not believe that Mo Kaiyan's mind would have a stronger defense than this. But the next moment, he opened his eyes in disbelief. I saw that MaleProtagonist's hand speed suddenly increased and caught the flying needle. Lal's heart moved and he was about to let the flying needle break free from the opponent's hand, but in an instant, a strong force came from MaleProtagonist's hand, and he actually held the flying needle in his hand. Then he punched forward and directly hit Suomi's fist. Bang! After a hard fight, the half-beast Suomi felt numb all over his body, and felt that the opponent's fist contained great power, and it seemed that his body was about to be broken apart. His ears were buzzing one after another, and he was almost suffocated by MaleProtagonist's punch. You have to know that MaleProtagonist is just an ordinary person's body, and Suomi has been transformed into a beast, and his strength is not as good as the opponent in his normal state. After a punch, Suomi knew that it was not good, but it was too late. MaleProtagonist did not give him a chance at all, and pushed his body and rushed towards Lar. Among the 4 people, the one who used the flying needle is the most dangerous to me, kill him first. MaleProtagonist thought so and did so. He hid behind Suomi's body and rushed towards Lar, but a strange color flashed in his eyes, because his waist and the back of his head were punched and kicked at the same time. It was Bezos and Carl, the remaining 2 of the 4 bodyguards. They did not use their abilities, but directly punched and kicked MaleProtagonist with their mental energy. It might be that their abilities were not suitable for fighting, or they might be afraid of causing accidental injuries. Although the 2 did not use their abilities, the punches infused with mental energy alone, if hit on a person's body, especially a vital part, would be enough to kill a person instantly. At this time, MaleProtagonist still did not retreat. He actually let the 2 punch and kick him, and still took Suomi to collide with Lal, who was shooting flying needles. Boom! Boom! Even though MaleProtagonist had gathered his mental energy at the back of his head and waist, he was still hit by these punches and kicks, causing his abdomen to churn and his body to tremble. But his impact was still fierce, and Suomi in front of him was now tall, with swollen animal-like upper body muscles and thick hair, which made him 3 times the size of an ordinary person. His line of sight was completely blocked, and his dodge route was also blocked. It can be said that the opponent's offensive is used to the extreme. There was a roar, and before Lal could react, the 3 of them had already collided with each other. Then MaleProtagonist walked around Suomi, who was collapsed on the ground, and pointed out a finger like thunder, hitting Lal's head, causing the other party to collapse. He fell down and lost consciousness. At this time, Suomi finally came to his senses. He roared angrily and punched MaleProtagonist with both fists, forcing him to retreat. Standing side by side with the other 2, staring at MaleProtagonist with red eyes. The series of attacks and defenses just now were too fast. After MaleProtagonist knocked Kano away, the 4 of them attacked MaleProtagonist one after another, but MaleProtagonist took the opportunity to kill one of them. In just a few seconds, the 4 of them only had time to attack once. This is the difference in strength between the 2 sides. They are both ability users, but they are different from the 4 Suomi who rely on instinct to fight. MaleProtagonist, who had received rigorous training from Daxia Lonke, had no shortcomings. Whether it is combat experience, mentality, skills, or physical fitness, they have been honed for a long time. Even if he does not use his abilities, MaleProtagonist can kill the 4 Suomi by just relying on his own body and thoughts. But just as MaleProtagonist and the remaining 3 Suomi were confronting each other, a burst of applause broke out. Snap, pop, pop, pop. In the direction where Kano was hit, the smoke, dust, and gravel from the original impact had dispersed. Kano, who had just been knocked away, was standing there intact, with no trace of injury from head to toe. He looked at MaleProtagonist and laughed and said, "You have good skills. It seems that your ability is due to your super physical fitness." MaleProtagonist also looked at him coldly, the murderous aura on his body getting stronger and stronger. It's just some boxing and kicking skills. Ability is important, but physical training is also essential. I've seen too many people like you who rely on ability and don't work hard to exercise. Your body is not much stronger than ordinary people. I will kill you one by one, slowly. But only you, Kano, only you, I will not let you die, I will cut off your hands and feet, put you into the cesspit, I want you to regret living in this world forever. Ha 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 ha. Kano opened his eyes wide, and his eyeballs were filled with bloodshot eyes from unknown time. Why? Because of those girls. Ha ha, let me calculate, I paid tribute to the black god, a total of 999. I am a woman, but I am also in the business of raising funds, and I have captured many women to sell. Your women in Daxia are very easy to sell, so don't they give you some money? Ha 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 ha, trafficking is okay, but killing is not. What a hypocritical police officer. You have no idea how powerful I am now. Kano looked at Kyuyan, and as he spoke, a violent and ferocious aura emerged from his body. He continued, you go out. Let me play with him. But Suomi and the other three were stunned and wanted to object. Although Kano's momentum was astonishing, after all, he was just an ordinary person before. After they fought with Kyuyan just now, they deeply understood the terror of the other party. Killing one of them without using his ability is amazing. Roll. Facing the hesitation of the three people, Kano frowned and waved his hand, and the three people were swept out by a force. They had no ability to resist at all. They were thrown out of the hole as if they were swatting flies. This action made Kyuyan's pupils shrink slightly, and he stopped chasing the three of them. You guys wait outside. I want to use him to test how far my power has reached. After saying that, Kano showed a cruel smile to Kyuyan, are you ready to face hell? At the foot of the mountain, Li Anping was still talking on his cell phone boredly, but no matter how many times he called, the other party's phone was never answered. It made him more and more impatient. Ye Wenbin on the side also looked pale, partly because his limbs were broken and in pain, and partly because he was getting more and more nervous looking at Li Anping's impatient look. He doesn't even want to say a word now, for fear of getting angry and attracting the other person's attention. I can only keep praying in my heart, praying that the call will be answered soon. Why do you think they didn't answer the phone? Li Anping asked Ye Wenbin on the side. Ye Wenbin's face trembled and he hesitated. Could it be because of the silent relationship? It's possible. Li Anping nodded and said, does it hurt? He pointed to Ye Wenbin's hands. Good. Both his hands and feet were broken by Li Anping. Almost a day had passed and they were already swollen. It hurts just to look at it. However, Ye Wenbin is indeed the person sent by Kano to manage the lone wolf business. There was a bit of perseverance, and even though his face was pale, he endured the pain. However, he was afraid of angering many parties and did not dare to make too many demands. I just hope that after helping Li Anping lure Kano out, the other party can let him live. Even though he knew it was a long shot. Li Anping nodded when he heard Ye Wenbin's answer, and then said, besides muting, there is another possibility. That is, he deliberately did not answer the phone, or threw the phone away. As for them, they have already escaped. Ah, Ye Wenbin exclaimed and glanced at Li Anping worriedly. After all, whether he can seduce Kano and his party is related to his survival. In fact, in addition to this, I suspect that the person is related to the special forces. They are in collusion with each other since the police and the special forces know about Lone Wolf and have received money from Lone Wolf. Combined with the fact that they sent Zhang Chuan to stop me, it is very likely that Kano has been taken away by the special forces before me, or he will be silenced. Call again. If no one answers, there is really no way. I can only go back to Emerald City and go directly to the special forces to force them to call the person out. But just as Li Anping finished making another call, a different voice came. The user you dialed has been turned off. Please call again later. Turn off? Did you destroy the phone, or is it for other reasons? Before Li Anping could figure it out, a burst of fire shot up from the direction of Black Dragon Mountain.